Meanwhile, Zola was simply trying to survive. She had no formula, no diapers, and her savings account had been frozen. Kofi had cut her off completely. Finances, insurance, everything. She and Keon had been erased. She walked to the corner store, desperate enough to ask for credit. But the owner wouldn't even meet her eyes. "Zola, I'm sorry, but you still owe me from last month, and with everything people are saying, I'd rather not get involved." Zola left with empty hands, and dignity hanging by a thread. But as she turned the corner, a voice called out from behind rusted iron bars. "Zola, come here, girl. Come on in. You and that baby look hungry." It was Mrs. Ketta, the neighborhood widow, mother of 7 grown children, a woman whose heart was bigger than her house. She welcomed Zola inside, placed a cup of hot tea and a slice of hard bread in front of her, and offered something far rarer than food: kindness. "I don't know what happened," she said gently. "But whatever it is, that baby ain't to blame. And you need help." For the first time since leaving the hospital, Zola broke. She cried, not softly, not politely, but with the desperate, hollow sobs of someone holding too much pain. Keon slept against her chest, while Mrs. Ketta stroked her hair like a mother would. "I don't understand," Zola whispered. "I swear to God I wasn't with anyone else. I don't know what's happening to me." That night, as she lay on the old mattress, a blurry memory surfaced, sudden and sharp. A glass of wine. A strange dizziness. Kofi wasn't there. The house felt unfamiliar. Then, nothing, just fog. She tried to chase the memory, but it dissolved like smoke. Something didn't add up. The next morning, the world exploded. Someone had leaked a photo of Kofi leaving the hospital with his mother and sister. The headline: "Multi-millionaire rejects his own son at birth." Social media devoured it. Some defended him, others condemned him, but everyone talked. Reporters began hunting for the woman at the center of the scandal. 2 days later, a knock came at Mrs. Ketta's door. A young journalist stood there, notebook in hand. "Are you Zola Ani?" Zola hesitated, holding Keon tighter, then nodded. "My name is Savannah Jones. I want to tell your story, but only if you want me to. The country deserves the truth." Zola didn't answer. She looked down at her son. The world was cruel, but staying silent might be worse. Meanwhile, inside the Dumont mansion, Kofi stood alone with the DNA results. He opened the envelope, scanned the page, then read it again. Negative. The baby wasn't his. Something inside him cracked not with grief, but with fury. He called his attorney and ordered him to destroy the provisional birth certificate. "That child is dead to me," he muttered, tossing the envelope into the fireplace and watching it burn. Hours later, in an upscale lounge in Altier, downtown Dallas, Kofi was laughing beside a young, flawless blonde named Camille. The room buzzed with executives, cocktails, and empty conversations. No one mentioned Zola. No one mentioned Keon. They had already been erased. Meanwhile, Zola spent the day searching for work baby in one arm, resume clasped in the other. She tried offices, bakeries, clothing shops, anywhere that might offer a chance. Every response was the same: "I'm sorry, we're not hiring." By nightfall, she returned home exhausted, feet throbbing, arms aching, carrying nothing but a small bag of rice, gifted by Mrs. Ketta. And still, she held on. When Zola returned home, she noticed an envelope slipped beneath the door. No name, no stamp, no handwriting she recognized. Inside, a single sentence: "He wasn't the only one in that house who looked at you differently." A chill crawled across her spine. She looked down at Keon, pulled him closer, locked the door, and shut every curtain. There were too many shadows in her story, and she was only beginning to understand that silence was never empty. Silence was a secret someone wanted buried. She hadn't slept peacefully since. That anonymous message echoed in her mind like a haunting lullaby. He wasn't the only one who looked at you differently. Fear settled into her bones, not of superstitions, but of memory. of what she remembered and what she didn't, of that night when everything blurred into fog. Days passed in suffocating quiet. Keon began to cry. Zola lifted him gently. He was only weeks old, yet his eyes watched the world with an ancient sadness, as if he already understood betrayal. She stroked his soft hair and hummed to him, then sat at the edge of the broken bed inside the borrowed house, the only refuge she had left. The world had abandoned her, but hunger didn't care. So that night, she made a choice. She wrapped Keon in the thinnest blanket she owned, lifted her chin, and walked through the neighborhood toward an industrial office building. The lobby smelled of bleach and old sweat. She asked for the cleaning supervisor. "I need a job. Anything. I just ask that you let me bring my son with me." The supervisor eyed the baby. "This isn't a daycare. He won't bother anyone. He'll sleep in a corner. I just need a chance." The woman sighed, tired, overwhelmed, understaffed. "Fine. But if he cries too much, you're out. I don't want trouble." That night, Zola mopped endless marble floors with blistered hands. Keon slept inside a cardboard box padded with a folded sheet. Every few minutes, she rushed to check if his tiny chest still rose and fell. Her muscles ached, but her pride hurt more. With every swipe of the mop, she felt like she was wiping away the last remnants of who she used to be. She was no longer the wife of Kofi Dumont. She was invisible. Days drifted by, and Keon began showing strange symptoms. Short breaths, fevers that wouldn't break, small tremors in his hands. Zola rushed him to a community clinic. The young doctor examined him silently, jaw tight. "We need more extensive tests. This may be serious." "Serious how?" Zola whispered. "It could be neurological, metabolic. I don't want to panic you without confirmation, but we can't ignore this." "How much will it cost?" The doctor exhaled. 5,000, maybe 6, depending on what we run." Zola's stomach dropped. She didn't have $100. That night, she didn't eat. She sold her only ring, the one Kofi once swore symbolized forever, and exchanged it for 2 cans of formula and a single pound of rice. The next morning, she walked into the local legal aid office, peeling paint, damp walls, and towers of paperwork. A young lawyer, Imani Grant, listened without interrupting. Her eyes were exhausted, but sharp. "I want to force my son's father to take responsibility," Zola said. Imani nodded. "Do you have the birth certificate?" Zola lowered her gaze. "He destroyed it. Said my child didn't deserve his name." The lawyer's expression hardened. "Then we start with a paternity and child support suit. Do you have proof you were married?" Zola pulled out a worn folder, a wedding photo, a copy of the marriage license, utility bills with both their names. "This will work for now," Imani said, "but we'll need an official genetic test." Zola swallowed. There was one. It came back negative. He said the child wasn't his. Imani paused, then spoke gently. "And you're certain you were never with another man?" Zola lifted her wounded eyes. "I don't remember. One night, I felt strange, like something was wrong. But I didn't do anything." The lawyer didn't push further. Some wounds didn't need dissecting. "I'll help you. I can't promise miracles, but I promise justice." Meanwhile, inside the Dumont mansion, pressure mounted. The media demanded answers. Talk shows debated. Comment sections turned vicious. Their prestigious name was becoming a punchline. Kofi panicked. He hired PR strategists, bought headlines, silenced reporters, and attempted to rewrite the story. But scandal seeped through the cracks of their perfect image. Mr. Sterling Dumont finally returned. Polished, composed, dangerous in his calm. He didn't need to raise his voice to create fear. He carried authority like a loaded weapon. Kofi confronted him in the study. "Father, I need to know if someone in this family did something to Zola." Sterling looked up slowly. "What exactly are you implying?" "You know what I mean. She swore she wasn't with anyone. The baby's DNA doesn't match mine, but the doctor says it matches someone close. Did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Sterling's stare sharpened. Your weakness is worsening your judgment. Stop inventing excuses for your failed marriage. That woman doesn't deserve another second of our attention. You can't ignore this, Kofi insisted. Something doesn't add up. Onyx was here when I wasn't. The chauffeur too? Do not drag your brother into this, Sterling snapped. He's a child. And if you were foolish enough to allow an outsider into this family, accept the consequences. At the doorway, Onyx heard everything. He walked downstairs, found his mother, and whispered, Mom, do you remember Aaliyah? Mrs. Odette froze. Why are you bringing up that woman? Because Dad has worse secrets than Zola, Onyx said. And you know it. What he did to Aaliyah was worse. Silence swallowed the room. Mrs. Odette turned white. Stop. That story died years ago. No, Onyx murmured. You just buried it, like everything else in this house. That same night, Zola took Keon to a private clinic that offered pro bono evaluations. Dr. Amati was there. He didn't question how or why. He just examined the baby carefully. After a long pause, he spoke. Keon has a mitochondrial disorder. It's rare, inherited. It affects cellular energy and neurological development. It progresses. Zola felt her body go numb. He could die? Not if we act quickly. But treatment is long and expensive. How much? More than 15,000, just to begin. Zola didn't cry. She simply held her son tighter. I don't have that money. There is one more option, he said gently. If we find a compatible relative, we may be able to begin an alternative treatment. We'll need DNA from the possible fathers. A compatible relative, Zola whispered. And then the memories returned. The humiliation, the abandonment, the pitying stares. What if the only person who could save Keon belonged to a family that despised him? Dr. Amati's face softened. Then you must decide if you'll confront them or let silence devour everything. Late that night, in her tiny room, Zola sat beside her sleeping son. On the table was another envelope, the genetic analysis she requested with Imani's help. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The results weren't the same as the hospital's report. This one revealed more. There was a match, but not with Kofi. With another Dumont. The paper slipped from her fingers. The world tilted. Her lungs forgot how to breathe. Because if this report was correct, the real father of her child wasn't just someone close to Kofi. He was someone who had destroyed lives long before hers. The air thickened, pressing against her chest. A single image surfaced in her mind. Mr. Sterling Dumont, refined, composed, smiling a smile that never reached his eyes. The match wasn't speculation. It wasn't rumor. It was science. It was truth. Keon's biological father lived behind the glass windows of the mansion she once called home, and he carried the same last name. After she gave birth, her unfaithful husband refused, without hesitation, to sign the birth certificate. That bastard is trash. He doesn't deserve my last name, he snarled, humiliating her in front of his entire affluent family. But his arrogance drained from his face the moment the doctor spoke. They say the worst kind of pain isn't physical. It's the kind that splinters you from the inside while everyone watches, judges, and applauds your downfall. And that was exactly what Zola lived through. Zola Ani was 26. She worked in a modest community library tucked inside Houston's historic Third Ward. She had always been a quiet woman, gentle, soft-spoken, a little timid, but with a warmth that made strangers feel like old friends. Her life wasn't extravagant, but her sincerity, loyalty, and the way she spoke, as if she didn't want to disturb the air around her, made people adore her. She fell in love with Kofi Dumont at 22. Heir to a Southern dynasty built on real estate and philanthropy, he swept into her world like a hurricane disguised as a summer breeze. Kofi carried himself with effortless confidence, wore a smile polished to perfection, and spoke in promises that sounded like forever. Promises that, over time, twisted into threats disguised as silence. That public hospital, with its cheap disinfectant smell, flickering lights, and newborn cries echoing down the hall, became the stage for a nightmare no one saw coming. Zola labored for 8 agonizing hours, alone. Her mother, fighting a terminal illness, couldn't make it. Her childhood friends had no transportation. And Kofi? He arrived after everything was already over. The room was cramped, its walls scraped and tired, lit by a harsh white light that felt almost punitive. Zola cradled her newborn, eyes swollen from crying, chest aching from abandonment. The door opened. Kofi strolled in. Designer suit, polished shoes, hair perfectly sculpted, as if he'd stepped out of a gala, not into a maternity ward. His mother, Mrs. Odette Dumont, followed with a gaze sharp enough to wound, and his younger sister, Nala, stared at Zola like she was dirt smeared across the family's legacy. "You're late," Zola whispered, barely finding her voice, clutching the tiny baby closer. Kofi didn't respond. He took a few steps, eyes landing on the child. He stopped. Something shifted, subtle at first, then violently. Not discomfort, not shock, but cold, calculated, venomous rage. "What is this?" he asked, not loudly, but with a quiet brutality that froze the room. Zola blinked, stunned. "It's your son, Kofi. Our son." Mrs. Odette stepped forward, with the confidence of someone who believed the world belonged to her. She examined the newborn, then lifted her chin, lips curling in disgust. "That," she declared, "is not a Dumont." Nala let out a short, nervous, mocking laugh. "Zola, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything." Zola's voice shook, her hands trembled. "The baby is yours, Kofi. He's ours." But Kofi wasn't listening anymore. He spun toward the nurse, who had just walked in to check vitals. "I want to speak to the hospital administrator. Immediately. I refuse to sign any birth certificate. That bastard will not carry my name." The words didn't just land. They lodged inside Zola like blades. The nurse froze, uncomfortable, then quietly tried to slip out of the room. Zola clutched her newborn tighter, tears blurring her vision, not from the humiliation, but from a deeper, crushing ache swelling in her chest. "How can you say that?" she pleaded. "He is your son, Kofi. Look at me, please." For the first time since walking in, Kofi finally met her eyes. But not like a husband, not like someone who once loved her. He looked at her the way someone examines a stain. "Do you think I'm stupid?" he hissed. "That child looks nothing like me. You really believe I'm going to take responsibility for someone else's mistake?" "He's not a mistake," Zola cried. "He is your son." "Don't raise your voice at me," he exploded, jabbing a finger toward her. "What you've done is unforgivable. You have no idea what you've just caused." Mrs. Odette stepped forward, arms crossed, gaze dripping venom. "I always knew what you were. An opportunist. A poor girl trying to climb her way into a better life with a convenient pregnancy. And look at you now. You don't even know who the father is." "Shut up!" Zola screamed, shaking. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't speak to my mother like that," Kofi thundered. He slammed his palm against the wall, the crack echoing through the tiny room. "And you, what you've done to my family, that can't be forgiven." The baby began to cry, loud, panicked, desperate, as if he could feel the ugliness polluting the air. Zola tried to calm him, rocking him gently, but she was unraveling inside. The noise drew the attention of a doctor. Dr. Amati, tall, gray at the temples, eyes heavy with exhaustion and compassion, stepped inside and stopped cold at the sight. "Is everything all right in here?" he asked carefully. "Of course not," Kofi snapped. "This woman is trying to pin a child on me. I want proof, now. I refuse to be tied to a child that isn't mine." Dr. Amati looked at Zola, then at the newborn. His expression shifted subtle, but telling. He took a slow breath. Mr. Dumont, I need to speak with you privately. I have nothing to discuss, Kofi said flatly. I'm very clear. That child isn't mine. I'm done here. Please, the doctor insisted, firmer now. It's important. Kofi ignored him, crossed his arms, and turned to his mother. We're leaving. Let her deal with her own mess. Zola tried to sit up, but pain shot through her body, forcing her back onto the bed. Don't go, she begged, voice cracking. Kofi, please. Just listen to me. Mrs. Odette stepped closer, delivering her final blow. I hope you come up with a good story for that child when he asks why he never had a father. And they walked out. Nala paused at the doorway and looked at Zola, not with pity, not with anger, but with a chilling emptiness, then followed her family. The room felt colder. Dr. Amadi quietly closed the door behind them and approached the bed. Zola was shattered. Her baby, still crying, clung to her chest as if she were the only world he knew. And he was right. Zola, the doctor said softly, lowering his voice. You need to be strong. What I'm about to tell you isn't easy. She lifted her tear-streaked face, barely breathing. What is it? Dr. Amadi hesitated. He looked at the baby, then back at her, with something like sorrow. The reason Kofi reacted the way he did makes medical sense. The baby has a genetic condition that isn't compatible with his DNA, but it's also not compatible with yours. Zola blinked, stunned. What are you saying? We need more tests, he continued, choosing each word carefully. But Zola, the child's biological father, appears to be someone close to Kofi. Very close. Her heart stopped. No, that's impossible. I was never with anyone else. Never. The doctor stood, visibly uncomfortable, and moved toward the door. I'll return once we have lab confirmation. For now, rest. You'll need it. Then he left, closing the door gently, as if afraid the room itself might break. Silence swallowed everything. The baby's cries softened, then faded into tiny hiccups. The physical pain in her body was manageable, but the pain in her soul was something else entirely. A wound without a name, without treatment, without end. And she had no idea hell had only just begun. She couldn't fathom that the truth waiting for her was darker than any lie spoken in that room. Zola couldn't move. It felt like the entire world had collapsed onto her chest. The silence was suffocating, thick, heavy, cruel. Kofi was gone. His family was gone. And her son, little Keon, slept peacefully on her chest, unaware that he had already been rejected by the world. Hours dragged by like ghosts in the early morning. Zola didn't sleep, didn't blink. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, searching for answers that didn't exist. She whispered to herself that it wasn't true, that this was a nightmare. But the pain didn't fade. It clung to her like a rusty blade lodged between bone and heart. And the worst part wasn't the humiliation. It was the doubt. An incompatible genetic condition. How? Why? She had been faithful, blindly, painfully faithful. Not a single touch, not a single thought, not a single betrayal. Yet her son was being treated like a stranger, even by the man she believed was his father. At dawn, a nurse entered with tired eyes, carrying a breakfast tray and a clipboard. Zola, honey, I need you to sign your discharge papers. Do you have someone who can pick you up? Zola shook her head. No, I don't have anyone. The nurse sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from witnessing too many tragedies. You can stay a few more hours, but we're short on beds. You'll have to leave soon. Zola nodded and looked down at Keon. I don't have anywhere to take him. 2 days later, she returned to the neighborhood where she grew up. Dirt roads, tin roofs, damp walls, and the familiar smell of soul food drifting through the air. Her mother's old, inherited house waited in ruins, shattered windows, peeling paint, no running water. Zola stepped inside with Keon in her arms and exhaled. It wasn't a mansion, but at least here, no one would judge her. She wanted to cry, but there were no tears left. Meanwhile, in the Dumont mansion, Tension wrapped itself around every wall. Kofi paced his office, bourbon in hand, jaw locked. "What do you mean incompatible?" he demanded into the phone. "Explain it clearly." On the other end, Dr. Amati remained calm. "Mr. Dumont, as I told you, the child's genetic condition matches someone in your family, but not you. I recommend a DNA test immediately." "So, you're suggesting the father is someone in my house?" "I'm not making accusations," the doctor replied. "Only scientific observations." Kofi hung up without responding. His mind raced. The chauffeur always too polite, the gardener too curious about Zola. His younger brother, Onyx only 20, always around when he wasn't. Everyone was suddenly a suspect. Mrs. Odette entered without knocking, elegant, composed, dripping superiority. "Well," she said, "I'm arranging a DNA test. It's time to put this nonsense to rest. I always knew that woman couldn't be trusted. It showed in her clothes, in her voice. Women like her ruin good names." Kofi clenched his fists so tightly, his knuckles whitened. "I want every employee investigated, every single one. I will not let anyone tarnish my name." Zola held Kian against her chest, as if her heartbeat alone could shield him from the truth. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't break. She just went still, hollowed out by a silence she finally understood was intentional. She had never been abandoned by one man. She had been abandoned by an entire family. And silence, she realized, was the cruelest weapon of all. That same night, she walked into Imani's office. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered, placing the envelope on the table. "But I can't stay quiet anymore." Imani opened the results. She didn't blink. She didn't move. Several seconds passed before she finally spoke. "Sterling Dumont." Zola nodded, expression empty, voice steady. "What are you going to do?" Imani asked. Zola lifted her chin. "I'm going to see Mrs. Odette. She knows. She's always known." The next morning, Zola arrived at the mansion without warning. The gate attendant hesitated, then, seeing her determined face and the baby in her arms, let her through. She walked across manicured lawns, through hallways she once crossed with hope, until she reached the main living room. Mrs. Odette was having tea with her sister. At the sight of Zola, her lips curled. "You have some nerve, showing up after the chaos you brought into this family." Zola didn't flinch. "I need to speak to you, alone." Mrs. Odette's sister rose silently and left. The tension thickened. The matriarch set her teacup down with slow precision. "You have 5 minutes." "I'm not here about your son," Zola said. "I'm here about yours, the other one." Mrs. Odette blinked, just once. But that single movement shattered her composure. "I know who the real father of my child is. It's Sterling, and you knew." "What are you implying?" she began. "I'm not implying," Zola cut in. "I'm stating it, and now, you're going to help me. Because this is no longer just about me." Mrs. Odette stood, hands trembling so slightly it was almost imperceptible. "You don't understand what it means to accuse a man like my husband." Zola stepped closer. And Aaliyah didn't understand what she was risking when she screamed either, or was she silenced with cash too? Mrs. Odette's eyes widened. That name was a ghost locked away, buried, denied. "How do you know that name?" "Ozzy mentioned it, and there's a pattern. Sterling isn't new to this, and your silence makes you complicit." Mrs. Odette staggered backward, then collapsed into the armchair as if the weight of every secret finally dragged her down. "Aaliyah worked here," she whispered. "A sweet girl. Then one day, she disappeared. They said she ran away, but I knew she didn't. I saw her cry. I saw the bruises. I saw how she avoided Sterling. I knew, but I was terrified." Her voice cracked. "Sterling told me that if I ever spoke, he would destroy everything, my children, my life, and he meant it. And you let it happen again," Zola said softly. "You let him do it to me." Mrs. Odette lowered her head. Silence was her confession. That night, Zola and Imani searched for Aaliyah. No new records. Only an old missing persons report, closed for lack of evidence. Imani accessed restricted medical databases. It took hours. Then, there it was. Aaliyah Dominguez. Diagnosis: unspecified psychosis. Admitted to a private clinic outside the city. A psychiatric facility? Zola whispered. 4 years. That's imprisonment. Forced isolation disguised as treatment. They decided to go the next morning. Imani used her credentials to request limited visitation, nothing revealing the true reason. Zola waited in the car, watching through the window. Patients walked in slow circles. Nurses monitored every movement. Cameras stood like guards. It wasn't a hospital, it was a whitewashed prison. An hour later, Imani returned, face pale, voice strained. She doesn't speak, she barely moves. She's heavily sedated, and she has marks on her arms, like someone who tried to. She stopped. The sentence didn't need finishing. Zola tightened her grip on Kian. This wasn't just about paternity. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about survival, about patterns, about a man protected by power, silence, and fear. And Zola finally understood Kian wasn't the first. He might not be the last. Unless she did something. She couldn't finish the sentence. Zola lowered her head, and the air around them thickened. Heavy, suffocating. She's alive, she whispered, but she isn't free, just like me. That same week, a journalist following the case leaked an audio recording. Old, without date or context. A desperate female voice screamed, "He drugged me. I didn't want to. I couldn't move. Please help me." The internet ignited. Some swore it was fabricated. Others insisted they recognized the voice. Imani traced the source, part of confidential medical files from the same psychiatric clinic where Aaliyah was being held. Someone who once worked there had sold it for cash. Zola listened to the audio once, then again. And the third time, her entire body went cold. It was her voice. Imani realized it too. She didn't speak. She only looked at Zola with a silent, devastating truth. Across town, Kofi received the audio via an anonymous message. He played it on speaker. The scream ripped through his office. His own breathing faltered. And suddenly, memories aligned, like knives. The night he left for that business trip. How Sterling insisted Zola would be well taken care of. Zola's distant eyes weeks later. Her fatigue, her sadness. The glass in Kofi's hand fell and shattered. The sound echoed the way his mind was shattering. He washed his face, stared into the mirror, and didn't recognize the man staring back. Not a polished heir, not a confident husband, but a son betrayed, blind, gullible, complicit through silence. He grabbed his keys and left the mansion without answering his mother's calls. He marched straight to Sterling's study and entered without knocking. Sterling was pouring himself whiskey, unbothered, unshaken. "You have no manners, son." Kofi shut the door behind him. His voice trembled, but his resolve didn't. "What did you do to her?" Sterling didn't answer. "I'll ask once more. What did you do to Zola?" Silence, arrogant, calculated. Then Sterling sipped his drink and spoke with chilling calm. "Everything I've done has been to shape you. You were never fit to lead this family. Too soft, too emotional." Kofi stepped forward, rage trembling in his jaw. "You drugged her. You violated her. Is that what you did? Lower your voice. Answer me." Sterling finally met his eyes. "She was a pawn. I needed to show you that trust is a weakness. And I was right. You failed, as always." Kofi staggered back, nauseated. He finally understood. His father hadn't hurt Zola out of desire. He destroyed her to humiliate him. "You're sick," Kofi whispered. "No," Sterling replied coldly. "I'm in control." "You're not in control of anything anymore," Kofi said, voice cracking, "because I'm going to destroy you, with the truth." Sterling laughed. "A spoiled boy going against me? Judges owe me favors. Media survives on my money. You have nothing." Kofi didn't stay to listen. He left, slamming the door, like escaping a burning building. When he arrived at Mrs. Ketta's house, he didn't know whether to knock or collapse. She opened the door, stern. "What do you want?" "To speak with her." "She doesn't want to see you, and she shouldn't." His voice broke. "Please?" Mrs. Ketta hesitated, then stepped aside. Zola was feeding Keon. When she saw him, she stood, her eyes blazing. "What are you doing here?" Kofi took a step, then froze. He looked stripped of every ounce of pride. "I came to ask for forgiveness." Zola's laugh was hollow, lifeless. "Your forgiveness means nothing to me now. I heard the audio. I know the truth. I spoke to him, Kofi. He admitted it." He swallowed. The words wouldn't come. He didn't need to say them. She already knew. "And now you show up, looking for redemption? After abandoning me in a delivery room? After humiliating me in public? After letting your family call me a parasite? Now you feel guilty?" "I know," he whispered. "And I deserve every word. But I'm here because I want to help you. I want to help you and my son." Zola's voice trembled, not with weakness, but fury. "He is not your son, he is mine. And what they did to me, cannot be forgiven, and I won't stay silent anymore." Her knees buckled and she sat, clutching Keon. The sobs came, raw, exhausted, empty. Kofi stepped forward. She raised her hand. "Don't come near me. I need time." He nodded, then left, without another word. Meanwhile, Imani prepared the case, thick with medical files, DNA reports, the audio recording, Aaliyah's disappearance, and indirect testimonies. "This will explode," she warned, "but you cannot back down." "I won't," Zola said. "Not this time." "They'll call you a liar, a gold digger, a vengeful woman." "I don't care," Zola replied. "I'm doing this for the ones who never got the chance." The media caught wind. Some rallied behind her. Others mocked her. But the story spread, and women began contacting Imani anonymously. Same patterns, same fear, same man. They filed the complaint. Cameras crowded the courthouse entrance. A photo of Zola holding Keon spread across the country. Then the world. Days later, Sterling requested a private meeting. Imani refused. Zola went anyway. They met in an empty, luxurious restaurant. He sat like royalty. She sat like a storm. "You're brave," he said. "No," she answered. "I'm a mother, and I remember. And whether you like it or not, my son exists, and he's yours forever." Sterling smirked. "I can take him from you. Custody, mental evaluation, financial instability. You won't stand a chance." Zola didn't blink. "Try, and I will release every voice, every file, every victim. You won't be feared. You'll be exposed." Sterling stood and left, speechless. Kofi called a press conference. Cameras pointed at him. Zola stood behind him, holding Keon, Imani beside her. Kofi stepped to the microphone. "I speak today as a son and as a witness. The father of my wife's child is my own father, and this isn't the first time he has done this." Gasps, shouting, flashing lights. What happened to Zola was abuse, violence, manipulation, and I refuse to protect the man who caused it. The world ignited. Meanwhile, Zola focused only on justice. She returned to the district attorney's office with Imani, joined by other women finally willing to speak. Her body was thin, her face exhausted, but her eyes were fire. For the first time, she wasn't scared. The complaint included everything: DNA, the leaked audio, medical records, and a secret recording of Sterling's admission. The system couldn't pretend anymore. "We're not just accusing a man," Imani told reporters. "We're accusing a system that protected him." When Zola stepped up to speak, the crowd fell silent. "For years, I believed I did something wrong, that I deserved the insults, the rejection. But it wasn't my fault. And if you're listening, if this happened to you, it wasn't yours either. I refused to let him silence another woman. Victims began stepping forward, some anonymous, some trembling, all telling the same story. Then, the unthinkable. Aaliyah resurfaced, thin, pale, hands shaking, escorted by the nurse who helped her escape the psychiatric facility. Zola hugged her, crying without shame. When Aaliyah finally spoke, her voice trembled but didn't break. He locked me away so no one would believe me. He told me the world would call me crazy. And for a while, I believed him. Until I saw Zola. And I realized he hadn't stopped. Her testimony changed everything. Police raided the Dumont mansion cameras, rolling live. Sterling was arrested, handcuffed, expression cold and indifferent. A historic moment. But 72 hours later, he was released. Lack of direct evidence, the judge said. An old friend of Sterling's. The internet erupted. Protest, debates, outrage. But Zola didn't collapse this time. She organized a march with Imani, survivors, activists, mothers. Thousands showed up holding signs, chanting, refusing silence. Zola led the march carrying Keon head high, voice steady. For the first time, the country listened. But while the world awakened, Keon worsened. The fever climbed. His tiny body weakened. He refused to eat. And suddenly, Zola realized the fight had just entered a new battlefield. Zola raced through the hospital doors, Keon in her arms. "Dr. Ahmadi!" she cried. He took one look at the boy, and his expression hardened. "We need to operate immediately." "How urgent?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Hours. If we don't intervene now, irreversible damage." Zola swallowed hard. "I don't have the money. Only $200. "That's it." Dr. Ahmadi's eyes softened. "Then get it any way you can." Zola ran into the streets. She called Imani. They phoned foundations. Every lead turned into a dead end. The hospital demanded a minimum deposit of $12,000, impossible to raise in hours. Desperate, Zola grabbed her phone. She didn't beg. She told the story. She showed Keon. She explained the urgency. Then she posted it online. Within hours, the response was overwhelming. Anonymous donors, mothers, students, artists, celebrities. The story had gone too far, too viral to ignore. No one would let a child pay the price for another man's cruelty. Less than 24 hours later, the account had raised over $70,000. Kofi heard the news. Without fanfare, without cameras, he sold his stake in a tech company he'd built years ago and handed the funds to Imani. "Do what you have to do," he said. "I just want the child to be well." Zola didn't respond. She didn't look at him. But something in her eyes had shifted, not trust, not love, not gratitude, but resolve. The surgery was a success. Keon responded well. Doctors warned the road ahead would be long, but hope had returned. That night, Zola fell asleep in the hospital chair, Keon's tiny hand in hers. She dreamed of a quiet house, laughter echoing through simple walls, a life unburdened by fear. But Sterling was still out there. Since his release, he had been pulling strings, trying to reclaim control. He knew his time was short, the pressure mounting, the system no longer bending to him. Quietly, he orchestrated an escape. Forged documents, a safe passage abroad, private bodyguards. Everything precise. Everything silent. He didn't know one crucial detail. Kofi had hired a private investigator. Every movement Sterling made was being tracked, every plan recorded, every route anticipated. The alert reached Imani immediately. She called Zola. Zola called the police. The plan was simple. Sterling would try to leave the country that night, but law enforcement would be ready. The trap was set. Sterling thought he could vanish. But the Dumont Empire's shadows had a new player, one who refused to be silenced. The airport was the crucial point. They had to act 1 hour before boarding. Zola didn't hesitate. She took a cab straight to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. She didn't notify the press. She didn't seek a spectacle, she only wanted justice. There he was, Sterling Diant, standing in the VIP line with a fake passport and two bodyguards. She looked at him. He looked at her. You! Sterling's voice dripped with arrogance. Zola didn't respond. She turned, and then two police officers arrived, accompanied by a judge and a prosecutor. Sterling Diant was formally detained. Attempted flight, document fraud, violation of conditional release. You won't get out so easily this time, the prosecutor said. Sterling smiled once. The world is full of traitors. Zola stared him down. No, the world is full of women who stopped being afraid. And just like that, the monster fell. Handcuffed before cameras, surrounded by security and witnesses, Sterling's once impenetrable aura of power crumbled. His gaze, once sharp and arrogant, was empty. His world, built on fear, manipulation, and silence, had collapsed under the weight of truth. The country watched, some in disbelief, others in relief, many in fury. The era of untouchable power had ended. Justice, unbought and unbroken, was walking freely. The trial was long, public, and televised. Dozens of witnesses, experts, doctors, psychologists, journalists, and women who had suffered in silence came forward. Among them was Ilaya. Her testimony shook the room. With a shaky but determined voice, she recounted the hell she endured, every word a strike against the system that had protected her abuser. Zola testified too. Keon in her arms, she recounted everything, waking up confused, the audio recording of her own cries for help, the public rejection, humiliation, and abandonment. She didn't ask for compassion, she demanded justice. After weeks of deliberation, Sterling Diant was found guilty on multiple counts: aggravated assault, coercion, evidence tampering, fraud, and attempted flight. Life imprisonment without parole. The country celebrated. Candles lit public squares. Scarves hung from balconies. Zola hadn't just won, so had everyone who had ever been silenced. Keon recovered. The operation had been successful. Daily visits from Kofi were quiet, unassuming. He sat beside Keon, held his hand, watched him sleep. No words, only presence, his silent way of seeking forgiveness. Zola noticed. She also noticed that the arrogant, distant Kofi of the mansion had disappeared, replaced by a man willing to face the ruins of his past. When Keon was about to be discharged, Kofi asked to speak with Zola alone. They sat on a bench in the hospital garden. I know I can never erase what I did to you, he said quietly. You can't, Zola replied firmly. I want you to know that I'm not leaving. Not as a couple, not for love, but as someone who understands the damage he caused and is willing to live with its weight for life. Zola watched him, then sighed. Sometimes forgiving is letting go. I'm not carrying you anymore, not out of hatred, but so I can walk lightly. He nodded. No insistence. She hugged him briefly, a farewell to something important that no longer belonged. With Keon stable and Sterling sentenced, Zola focused on what mattered, making her story endure. She wrote on loose sheets. Then Amani gave her a hardcover notebook. Fill it with what broke you and what saved you. She titled it The Son of Silence. 6 months later, a small independent press published it. The launch day, Zola trended nationwide. The book sold out in hours. Reviews called it brave, necessary, and heartbreaking, a testimony, a warning, a remembrance. With the royalties, she founded the Keon Foundation, named for her son and what he symbolized: hope born from horror. It offered free legal aid, emotional support, temporary shelter, and medical guidance. Women arrived from across the country, fearful and wounded, but no longer alone. Aaliyah volunteered. Amani continued as legal ally. Mrs. Ketta became an honorary godmother. Kofi helped quietly, organizing donations. Zola became a public figure, speaking only when sincerity mattered. Her story was never a product. It was an open wound, now a beacon. Years passed. Keon grew surrounded by love. Curious, joyful, intelligent. He knew his story was special, that his existence had changed lives. On his 6th birthday, Zola wrote him a letter. My dearest son, you were born in silence, but your voice has woken the world. I didn't raise you to be brave. You already are. I raised you to be free. Your origin doesn't define you. Love does. And you, Keon, are my greatest lesson in love. On a warm March afternoon, Zola walked a tree-lined path, with Keon on her hip. He hugged her like he had when he was small. She looked at the sky, silent for several seconds. Are you okay, Mom? He asked. She smiled not with sadness, but with peace. The pain broke me, but you rebuilt me. And they kept walking. Did you enjoy the story? I'd love to know which city you're listening from. Let's meet in the comments. If you'd like to support my work, you can send a super thanks so I can continue bringing more stories like this. Your support means the world, and I'm so grateful for it. On the screen, you'll also see 2 more life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more waiting for you on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.